We're here today with Sofia Opatska, CEO of Lviv Business School in Ukraine. Sofia, yesterday 97% of the voters in Crimea decided they wanted to secede from Ukraine and be annexed by Russia. What do you make of this?
Well, I don't think that people in the world believe that that was 97%, because if you have elections and the conditions and pressure which was happening yesterday in Crimea and which is happening already for 2 weeks in Crimea, I don't think that this is like real will of people, and that people in Crimea, even many of those who would think that it's going to be better with Russia, that they are aware of all the facts, that they are aware of all the situation, and that they take conscious decision right now.
What do you think Russian President Vladimir Putin has on his agenda? He's going to talk to, I think, both houses of parliament tomorrow. What is he going to tell them?
Well, there might be difference between what he's going to tell and what's on his agenda. So I don't know what he's going to tell. But speaking about agenda, I think that he did not really like what was happening in Ukraine over last months. I think the plan was to have some kind of unity between a couple of countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Ukraine economically. But also I think that was very much about political influence, because that was something related to dictatorship and not real democracy. That was something related with absence of free media and of violating human rights. So the whole protest which took place in Ukraine, that was really against those things, but also against corruption, which I think all of us are aware take place not only in Ukraine, but takes place in Russia. Maybe in a little bit different version, but it still happens there. So I think he does not really like what happened in Ukraine, and this is his opportunity to take care that those processes do not happen in Russia.
So what do you think the decision after the referendum will mean for Ukraine going forward?
Well, I think Ukraine, no matter what happens with Crimea, needs to do very important economic reforms and reforms overall. Reforms in rule of law, reforms administrative reforms. We were not really doing them for 23 years. And one of the reasons why people in Crimea would like to go with Russia, because they did not find economic wealth in Ukraine, and they look for different opportunity. So if economically Ukraine would be doing differently, I don't think that would be an issue at all. So no matter what happens with Crimea, I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult for many people emotionally, keep doing work and focusing on reforms. But this is definitely what we need to do in short term, because window of opportunity for Ukraine is very short right now, and we have to take this moment.
Well, what do you think that the new government in Kiev ought to do in response to Putin's actions?
Well, it's very important that we do not allow the same things in other eastern oblast regions in Ukraine. There are some tries to, with people brought from Russia, waving Russian flags and to destabilize situation. And I think that's very important right now, to have the situation stable in the country. We are still, I think we as a country still look for some diplomatic solutions. And in that sense, I think our new government did a great job, working with other international peers. And yes.
Beyond the politics, what are the economic advantages of Ukraine aligning with Europe as opposed to Russia?
Well, there were a lot of discussions, what Ukraine will gain with Europe, what Ukraine will lose with Europe. Well, maybe for some industries, it's not very, very well to go with Europe. And I think the major issue for Ukrainians is that going with Europe should create a different system of management in the country. It was for us, I think it was one of the main reasons how we can become more transparent country, how the rule of law can start working, so that people don't have to go to the court and bribe for the decision of the court. Which means that other counterpart knows from the very beginning that if you don't bribe, you don't get the decision. We need to get rid of those issues. And for us, we have a lot of questions towards Europe as well. I mean, it's not that we support the way of life 100%. We have some differences in values, and in some sense, we would like to go with some things like we do in Ukraine, but still, the most important is how the system is run in the country, and that was the most important thing. And again, I understand that some industries might lose, but I'm sure that those are not knowledge-based industries. Those are most probably last century or last 2 centuries industries, which we need to reform in any way. And this can be also a good reason. I know it's going to be tough. I know it's not going to be easy. And in short term, we might lose. But the question is, would you like to win in short term or in long term?
So in Moscow today, according to press reports, these sanctions that the U.S. government did impose today were met basically with derision and mockery. In fact, the Russian stock market, I think, went up. Mm-hmm. Assuming that everyone, both sides, want a diplomatic resolution. No one's interested in a military one. What types of sanctions could the U.S. and EU impose that would be effective but not drive both sides into a deeper disagreement?
Well, I think you have posted the question in very right way, that assuming 2 sides would like a diplomatic resolution. Well, unfortunately, we don't really see that the other side would like to have this diplomatic resolution. Even moreover, I think that there is even more and more pressure how not to resolve it diplomatically. But if I were to answer the question how the situation can be influenced, from outside of the world, outside of Ukraine world, I think that has to do something with energy issues. Well, Russia is selling oil, selling gas, and definitely it's one of the major sources of income in the country, to the country. So I think if there was a way somehow to influence, that would be the way to do it for the energy sector, most probably.
What do you think is going to happen to the minorities in Crimea, the people who did not want to rejoin Russia?
Well, thank you very much for this question, because unfortunately, very often this question is not asked about other minorities which are not Russian minority in Crimea. In reality, well, Russians have the majority. About 50% of the population in Crimea are Russians, but they were not ethnically settled there. Ethnically were Crimean Tatars, who make about 20%, and they were deported by Stalin. And then 23 years ago, when Ukraine gained independence, they got the chance to come back to Crimea. There are also Ukrainians there who make also about 20%, and then there are about 10% of other ethnic groups, Greeks, Armenians, Georgians, so very, very huge mixture. What will happen to them? Neither Tatars nor Ukrainians nor many other minorities who live in Crimea accept the results of the referendum and the whole situation itself. So unfortunately, we will have very many refugees. In my opinion, Crimea will become, nothing will be happening there. So it might be kind of silent war, which can last for a very long time, like it happens in Pridnestrovia, or it happens in Abkhazia or North Ossetia, which means there's kind of no war there, but nothing happens. No tourists, no development of infrastructure, just, frozen the way it is. So most probably a lot of refugees will move to Ukraine, to mainland Ukraine, if we can say that way. I know that Western Ukraine already gets a lot of refugees, especially from Crimean Tatars. There were a lot of pictures already from Crimea, which are quite offensive to Crimean Tatars. And I think that in reality, one of the major reasons why Ukraine is so focusing on the situation in Crimea and tries to keep Crimea with the whole Ukraine sovereignty is also because not only Ukrainians but Crimean Tatars who don't have other land to live.
Could you explain a little bit what the impact of the agitation in Ukraine has been on the Lviv Business School, and how has it affected you, and what do you think is going to happen going forward?
Of the situation, how it influenced the school. Our university, it was always, I should talk not only for the school, but for the university, overall Ukrainian Catholic University. We always have been in very pro-Western position in the education as well. So for this reason, we had quite a lot of difficulties with former Minister of Education, who was very pro-Russian and who was putting a lot of pressure on our institution, and he was trying to control as much as possible universities.
In what sort of ways was that control exercised?
Well, for example, we are a completely private institution and we don't get the penny from the state, but in a way, still we get a lot of rules, a lot of from Ministry of Education. They provide accreditation. For example, it's not the independent body or association providing accreditation to the universities, but it is Ministry of Education. So you have to go for license there, you have to go for accreditation, you have to, the books have to be under the signature of Ministry of Education. So there are there was a lot of controlled things. Plus there was a huge corruption in the Ministry of Education. For example, all institutions had to put down some database system, and they had to buy it from some relative of Minister of Education company. So the whole system is very corrupt and very interdependent. And our institution was always honestly saying that we believe that this should be according these international standards. This should be according to these best practices in Western countries. And of course, this was not liked very much. From the very first day, for students and for the faculty body, it was not the choice what we should do. I think a lot of things were run by students. A lot of initiatives were run by students, and administration and faculty members were always supportive. A lot of people as individuals participated in the protests. Yes, we had somehow to change the way we are working. Sometimes we are doing right now some social things which are not directly related to our work. But at the same time, I think one of still important roles which we have right now is to build the community. I think the university and the business school itself has very high level of trust from business community and from community overall. And it's not only about Lviv, it's about Kyiv as well. It was always very transparent institution, and this level of trust which we have, we could see it in very different initiatives which we started and how they were supported. And people very often right now, they like to come for our events, though the time is not easy, but they like to come and to see how other people think, what they think, to discuss, to just to be together.
What is the outlook for U.S. and European companies who do business in Ukraine or want to do business in Ukraine? What can they look forward to in the next year?
Well, last years were quite difficult. We did not really were getting investments in Ukraine for the same reasons. You cannot plan long term. You cannot. You have to deal with a lot of bureaucratic issues. So one of the very important reforms which we need to do is deregulate. We need to create environment for innovations in entrepreneurship. And this is one of the first initiatives which our Ministry of Economics is right now focusing on. Also from our business school, a lot of alumni are involved in the regional projects of deregulation, so that business people are telling from business side how this reform should be done in a way that they can run business in a transparent way, but at the same time that it's not controlled completely by government. In a way, international companies were in better situation because many Ukrainian companies, they had additional challenge. They did not have very good environment for doing business, but at the same time, if you were doing business, it could have been taken away. Companies were offered amount of money, and either you sell for this amount of money, which is half of the price of the company, or you lose it. So there was a lot of pressure on Ukrainian companies as well.
So 3 months ago, could you ever have anticipated where you would be and how far you would have come? And is the euphoria that you all must have felt several weeks ago, a month ago, is that sustainable? Is that still there? Is there still a sense that things will move forward and get better?
If you would ask me in October, is it possible that people in this country, after not fulfilled expectations of Orange Revolution, would be able to get out of the streets, I would not believe you. I mean, I would say no, definitely no. Everybody were, I would say, had enough of what is going on in the country, but I don't think people really believed. But what happened is that in 23 years, there was no situation then people were injured or killed, so there was everything in a peaceful manner done in Ukraine. And that was a huge shift for many people that such things could happen in the country. And I would never say that it would, it comes, sometimes we think, okay, it cannot be more than that. But then there is another month and it's more than that. About euphoria, I don't think we had euphoria this time. I mean, we were happy that it's almost ended, though now we see that it did not end. But because so many people were lost, because so many people died, and those people were just amongst us, it was very difficult emotionally. And we still live through this and day after day. And because of that, I think right now we cannot give up. We just cannot give up. Every time we remember how many people lost their lives, and we think, was it worth doing that? So we have to be different, I think one thing which every Ukrainian should promise to himself or to herself, it cannot be the way how it was 4 months ago. And I have to do whatever I can do at my place. It's my obligation. It's not obligation or responsibility of the president of the country. It's not responsibility of prime minister or the cabinet of ministers. It's responsibility of every single Ukrainian or citizen of Ukraine to do something to change this country. Otherwise, it was not worth that.
Maybe one last thing. What Based on the experience of the past few months, what lessons in leadership do you think you have learned that you may not have learned before?
It's very interesting because during last 3-4 months, people were always looking for some leader. But maybe because our opposition leaders were a little bit undecisive, we saw other way of leadership. We saw this opportunity and this possibility when every person can take a leading role. So due to that, due to self-organization, so many new interesting initiatives evolved. And people were supporting them, and people were engaging in different initiatives. And right now it still continues because we realize that it's not anymore a job only of the government. People take the initiative. Just to give you an example, right now we need to have a lot of new faces in the public service, in public administration. We realize that we need a lot of new young people going there and changing the system. So we as a school got a request. You have to start some programs in public administration, something we have not been thinking about a month ago. And right now, when we say that we would like to start a 3-month modular program in 1 month, it looks a little bit unrealistic, but at the same time, if not us, then who? We have to respond to the need, and I think that's what people learn to do, and that's one of the way of leadership. I think another understanding of leadership is that it's about leadership, but it's about all us as human beings. I think that's something what we really, as Ukrainians, started to realize. We started to communicate. Before all these events, people were living in their small silos, business people communicating with business people, church with church, NGOs with NGOs, according to social statuses, all those silos were maybe meeting, but not talking too much, and still people were perceived very much by social position or their professional position. I think what happened at Maidan, you did not really know who was there, and there were very rich people there, people who are retired already, people who have their companies or who don't have their companies, who do different professions, and you did not really care who they are. You were just grateful that they are supporting all of that you have same values, and people were talking to each other about important things, no matter which social or professional status you have. So we started to notice each other as human beings, first of all, not according to regalia which we have, and I think that's the major shift in our society as a society.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll look forward to following what happens.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks a lot.
I hope it will go positive ways.
Thank you.